All he did was ask her for a drink of water. As Jesus sat, the midday heat beat down on him heavy and hard, for it had been like a day like most had become in Jesus' life at this point, full of teaching, preaching, healing. And everywhere he went, the faithful band of 12 followed behind him, them too asking questions, seeking more information, and at times handling the large crowd that had begun to gather. But now, they finally found themselves alone. Jesus sends his disciples away to find food, and then as Jesus sat, on the near horizon, as the heat waves rose towards the sky and the sand swirled in the wind, that's when he first saw her, walking towards him, carrying that large container on her head. Slowly she makes her way closer and closer, to come to the well beside where Jesus was sitting. As she gets closer, Jesus tries to not make it obvious that he's been watching her. But as the woman came to pass by where Jesus was sitting, she doesn't acknowledge him. She doesn't look at him. She doesn't say hello. She keeps her eyes looking straight forward. She just keeps walking. And as she pulls level with Jesus, he turns and looks up at her. And that's when he says, "Can you give me a drink of water?" These words alone were enough to stop the woman dead in her tracks. As she stands still with the water carrier resting on her head, she turns her eyes sideways. Not enough to make contact with Jesus sitting there, and she slowly says, "Do you talk to me?" And Jesus asks again, "Can you give me a drink of water?" Now, to ask for a drink of water is no big deal. It was hot and she had water. Jesus was thirsty and he didn't. So why then the shock and amazement as Jesus asks her for a drink? Well, for one, she's a Samaritan and Jesus is a Jew. At this point in time, those two cultures are sworn enemies. The cultures in the society didn't allow the two to mix. Because of their differences in the society, they were expected to build walls between each other, to be divided, to never mix or associate with one another. So the woman double checks, "Are you sure you want to talk to me?" In effect, she's saying, "Don't you know the rules? If people were around, what would they think if they saw us?" Regardless of the simplicity of the request Jesus had and the obvious solution she had to Jesus' thirst, this should absolutely not happen. But this isn't the only reason I think that she's shocked Jesus talks to her. As we read later on in the scriptures, this Samaritan woman isn't known for somebody who keeps the rules. I also don't think Jesus had to ask this woman for a drink. For as we later read also, soon his disciples returned and they could have given him the drink that he wanted. She's shocked because Jesus makes a point to talk to her and uses his thirst as an excuse to start a simple conversation. You see, when Jesus first saw her on that horizon, walking towards him, he knew something about her. It wasn't the way she looked or the thing that she carried or the way that she walked. For at that time, women of the towns and the villages went twice a day to visit the well to fetch water. Once in the morning and again at dusk, for these were the coolest times of the day. They all went as a group, as a community. But this woman, she went alone. It wasn't normal to see a solitary single person walking to the well, especially not at the hottest part of the day. For some reason she wasn't welcome to go with the others. When Jesus first catches a glimpse of her on the horizon, he knew she was someone that needed to hear his freeing gospel. She came to the well alone at the hottest time of the day, when everyone was indoors, when no one else was around to see her. She came alone because she wasn't able to stand the stares, the snide comments, the judgmental glances, the whispers, the pointing fingers anymore, all of which caused her to feel such a shame and guilt and pain. She was considered unclean, ashamed, used, abused, an outcast, a failure, a disappointment, a sinner. And when close enough, Jesus strikes up a conversation by simply saying, "Can I have a drink of water?" Then Christ's disciples return. And it's at this point, I'm sure the woman's thinking, this is where this Jesus stops talking to me. There are other people around, and this Jesus now will pretend not to know me. He'll be like the others and start making fun of me. Now his friends are around, those snide comments, that stares and those glances, all judgmental would start. But imagine then. Imagine her amazement as Jesus continued to treat her as a person of worth, even when his friends and others are around. And in front of everybody, Jesus asks her, "Can I have a drink of water?" And as Jesus reaches out his hand, and the moment his hand touches the cup of the Samaritan woman, in the eyes of the Jewish law, he too becomes as unclean as her. Not only does Jesus see her and know that she's a Samaritan, not only does Jesus see her and know that she's an outcast, not only does Jesus actually take the cup and share the burdens, he shares her dirt, he shares her pain. Imagine the sense of freedom she must have felt as Jesus continued to share with her. A freedom that comes from knowing that you are not alone. A freedom that comes from somebody seeing you as more than a past, more than a sinner, more than a rumor. A freedom that comes from now knowing the past can truly be put behind you. A freedom that allows you to start again, refreshed, renewed, and restored. A freedom that releases you from the guilt of the sin of the past. A freedom that allows you to stop being an outcast and become a fully engaged member of society, a person of worth, and feel like a truly loved child of God. Then Jesus asks to know more about the Samaritan woman. He asks her to go home and bring the man with whom you live to meet with me. The Samaritan woman must have thought, okay, this Jesus knows I'm a Samaritan. This Jesus knows I'm an outcast in my town. This Jesus continues to talk with me even when others are around. This Jesus even dares to take the cup and share my pain. But surely this is the moment I have gone too far and this Jesus stops talking to me. She hangs her head in shame. She quietly utters the words, "But he is not my husband." And Jesus replies, "I know. But I want to know you. And I want you to bring him to me." The Samaritan woman, unclean, ashamed, used, abused, an outcast, a failure, a disappointment, a sinner, now knows Jesus wants to know her. At that moment, not only had Jesus talked to a Samaritan woman and broke the rules, at that moment, not only had Jesus taken her cup and shared her sins and broke the rules, at that moment, Jesus, a rabbi, made a woman, a Samaritan woman, his messenger. And again, he broke the rules. In all, it suggested Jesus breaks over 30 Jewish laws in this one passage of Scripture alone. Because in effect, what Jesus is saying, I don't care what society says. I'm thirsty and I'm going to ask you for a drink. I don't care what society says. I'm thirsty and I will receive your cup. I don't care what my religious code says. I want to meet your non-husband, and I therefore need you to deliver him this message. In effect, in all these moments, he is saying, you are more important than these things. You, unclean, ashamed, used, abused, an outcast, a failure, a disappointment, a sinner. You are more important, and I choose you. The woman doesn't just pick up and walk back to the village and her home. In the midst of all her excitement, she literally jumps up and runs towards that dusty horizon where Jesus had first seen her, running because she can't wait to share her message and the good news back home. In fact, she's so excited she even leaves the water carrier behind. And you know what? She didn't just share her message with the man that she lived with. So filled with joy, worth, and a sense of freedom, when she hits her hometown, she forgets about her past. She forgets about her lowly status. She forgets about all those stares, those snide comments, those judgmental looks, those pointing fingers. She shares how she's just met with Jesus. Her news, so passion-filled, so powerful, so profound, that she doesn't just bring back the man with whom she lives. The whole town returned with her. Imagine what it took. Unclean, ashamed, used, abused, an outcast, a failure, a disappointment, a sinner, receives complete freedom from Jesus. The pain of the past, the present, gone, and the whole town returned with her. May we be more like Jesus. May we see those on the horizon and fill them with a sense of hope. May we forget about the norms of society and culture and reach out and share burdens and pains of others. May we truly, authentically, genuinely treat others as people of worth. May we see beyond the stigma and guilt of the past and find freedom in the gospel of the Prince of Peace. May we too find ourselves so excited, so passion-filled, so profoundly impacted by meeting with Jesus that we too leave our water carriers behind and proclaim the good news of the gospel. The good news that says our God is a God of love, grace, mercy, hope. Our God is a God of generosity, joy, peace, compassion. Our God is the God of charity, salvation, justice. And our God is a God that proclaims freedom. And it's a freedom for everyone.